Watch how fury erupts across the House of Commons as MPs accuse Labour of betraying victims by allowing dangerous offenders to leave prison early. With emotions running high and survivors at the centre of the debate, this explosive confrontation becomes one of the most powerful justice clashes in Parliament. Before we continue, hit like and subscribe to Britain Daily for more explosive political coverage. Let's watch this explosive clip.
Imagine you're the victim of a serious crime, as serious as rape or child grooming, and you receive a letter telling you that the perpetrator who harmed you is going to be let out of prison early. Appallingly, this is the experience right now for thousands of victims of crime, including some of the most serious crimes imaginable, thanks to the changes that have been made to our sentencing laws by this Labour government, helped by the Liberal Democrats. Before the Minister and Labour MPs, as he did, tells us this is a result of prison overcrowding, I want every member of this House to be crystal clear about the actual choice this government is making. The last Labour government released 80,000 prisoners early. The last Conservative government also operated early release programmes, as this government has. That's not new, but these schemes excluded serious sexual offenders. Do Labour MPs really want to tell their constituents they support the early release of rapists and child groomers when there are other existing schemes that could be used to avoid that? I want to pay tribute to grooming gangs campaigner Fiona Goddard, who, like many others, refused to be silent when she received her letter. Fiona's abusers were sentenced to between 16 and 20 years in prison in 2019. Now she says the justice she got in that courtroom is being snatched away from her, and she's right. What did the Labour government say to the journalist raising her case? That the most serious offences would be excluded. Labour told a victim of rape, sexual assault and grooming that her offenders weren't serious enough to be excluded from early release. Disgraceful. And here we are, just a matter of weeks away from these serious offenders coming out, and we still don't know how many are being released and what crimes they've committed. So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for granting this urgent question. This government cannot cover up what it's doing to victims any longer. They must tell us now, today, how many criminals, how many rapists and child groomers are going to be released early, when they're going to be released, and exactly what crimes they've committed. I'm confident when the public understand what is being done in their names, there'll be an outcry, and our new incoming Prime Minister will have a choice: to act in the interest of rapists and paedophiles, or to stand up for victims. What's it going to be?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've listened to the Honourable Member on this issue a lot, and I must once again remind him of his record in government and why the Sentencing Act was an absolute necessity to keep the criminal justice system functioning. Prisons, when we came to office, were at bursting point. 500 prison places added in 14 years. 10,000 offenders released by the last government, largely in secret. And that's the key point, Mr. Speaker, because he's asked quite rightly and understandably questions about how the scheme is going to be delivered, how victims are going to be kept informed. Under the Conservatives, it was pure chaos. They lost the grip of the system. They didn't have a long-term plan for stability in the prison estate. And that meant when they did have to operate early release mechanisms, they gave the victims just a few days' notice, if that at all. Complete secrecy, complete chaos, and we will not let that happen to the British public again. There is a choice. There is no alternative that has been offered by the opposition to the prison crisis that they created. There is a choice. Strict...
Can I just help? But we don't need to worry about what their position is. The question is to yourself and about what you're going to do. As I've also got a constituent that got a letter. So I've got to say it's very serious across the country. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me be very clear. The Sentencing Act, which received royal assent in January, sets out some provisions which are coming into effect in September. We are determined to ensure that victims will receive due notification in good time, not just because we believe there is a responsibility of government to let them know, but because we know that victims need to have a role to play in the licence conditions that we set. It's absolutely vital that victims' voices are heard. That's why we've already begun communication with victims' groups and indeed victims who are party to the victim contact scheme. And we will go further and make sure that all those that are party to the scheme receive precise information on their case. Not just because we want to let them know, Mr. Speaker, but because we want to hear from them to ensure that when we put in the most robust licence conditions in the community, victims' voices are at the heart of the decisions we make. That's absolutely right, and that's not what happened under the Conservative government.
Mr. Speaker, the British people will be absolutely disgusted and revolted that these child grooming gang perpetrators and rapists may be released early. Reform's position is clear. They should receive mandatory whole-of-life sentences. If the excuse from this government is there's a shortage of places, then why doesn't it get on and deport the 10,000 foreign nationals clogging up our jails?
Well, Mr. Speaker, deportation of foreign national offenders is at record highs under this government, and will continue to work to make sure that we deport those foreign national offenders who shouldn't be here. I think the Justice spokesperson for reform is the Right Honourable Member for Runcorn, and recently she said that 1.2 million people should be put in prison every year. There is no plan, no serious plan for reform that keeps our country safe.
Esther back there.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, the government announced the first areas to be investigated as part of the rape gang inquiry. And yet, under this government's new Sentencing Act, rapists and child groomers will be released early from prison. The Minister must see that putting these criminals on the streets not only makes an absolute mockery of Labour's rape gang inquiry, but goes to prove Labour were never serious about giving one or locking up those perpetrators.
Well, Mr. Speaker, as I said, there was an inquiry into these issues that was began by the last Conservative government. The chair of that inquiry, Professor Alexis Jay, said that their response was, quote, inconsequential, insubstantial, committed to nothing. Victims waited years for action and got nothing. There were briefings. It was, quote, hysterical and half-baked, highly emotional. The former Prime Minister Boris Johnson said money spent on child sex abuse inquiries as being, quote, spaffed up the wall. I will not take any lessons from her or the Conservative Party on this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the news that Keighley and Bradford will finally be getting an independent grooming gangs inquiry. This has been a long fight. But for survivors like Fiona Goddard, who I spoke with again last night, that news has been bittersweet, because the very fact that Fiona and many other victims and survivors of the most horrific sexual violence have been written to by this government to inform them that the very rapists and paedophiles convicted of abusing them could be released as early as September is an absolute disgrace. Mr. Speaker, Fiona's life has been turned upside down, and she and many others right now live in fear and of fear of being re-traumatised once again by a system which is literally diminishing the horrors that happened to them. So I ask the Minister directly, will he guarantee right now from the dispatch box that Fiona's perpetrators will not be released early?
Let me thank the honourable member for not just his question, but indeed his work on this issue, done in good faith for a number of years. I will gently say to him, as I've said before, that the Sentencing Act which was passed, which is difficult, no doubt, is only on the statute book because of the failure of the Conservative government over 14 years to build appropriate prison places. And on the issue of grooming gangs, before coming to this place, I spent a large part of the previous decade working with victims of grooming gangs. I take it incredibly serious. And I know the honourable member does as well, and I respect him for the work he's done on this issue. But in 2022, the report by Professor Jay offered a series of recommendations on this very important issue for his community, my community, and across the country. And he knows, because he sits on the Home Affairs Select Committee, he knows when she gave evidence to that committee in the beginning of 2025 that she was ignored month after month after month by successive Conservative Home Secretaries. So we will not be taking lessons on this issue from the Conservative Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Soft touch fever is spreading across the land because in Scotland the SNP Scottish Executive is about to start releasing rapists as much as 2.5 years early. Does the front bench not realise that they're so out of touch with the public on this issue that they risk the very fundamentals of the justice system?
Well, he's right that faith in the justice system is absolutely crucial, and that's why the situation we inherited, which would mean that the criminal justice system was teetering on the brink of collapse, where we would not have been able to have trials, where arrests would have been made impossible, is completely unacceptable, and we'll never let that happen again.
Jim Allister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Surely the Minister must agree that sustaining and instilling confidence in victims is essential to securing and sustaining prosecutions.
Quite right.
And therefore, any indication that there could be early release of such a person is bound to undermine a victim's confidence. Last week in Northern Ireland, we saw, through the bravery of two young women, Jeffrey Donaldson convicted as a child rapist, a man who passed himself off in this House and elsewhere as a statesman, demonstrating that no one, thankfully, is above the law. But if we get into the business of early release for child rapists, how do we ever hope to sustain victims coming forward?
Mr. Speaker, let me put on record also my gratitude to the bravery of those victims that he's identified for what they undertook to ensure there was justice. What undermines confidence in the criminal justice system is a system that completely unravels. And without the appropriate prison places, without getting down the Crown Court backlog, which my honourable friend, the Courts Minister, is busy doing, we undermine faith in the system completely. We cannot let that happen. That must mean difficult decisions, but we won't shy away from those.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister for his answers to the questions. My constituents are horrified by early release of rapists and child groomers. And if a criminal is sentenced to 15 years for destroying a child's life or committing an horrific rape, they should serve every single day, indeed every single hour of that sentence behind bars. Opening the prison gates early does not fix the justice system. It actively endangers women and children across the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And will the Minister urgently review these catastrophic legal changes and guarantee that no convicted rapist or child groomer will be given a get out of jail card by this Minister's department and this government? Please, thank you.
Mr. Speaker, we will not shy away from the difficult decisions needed to save the criminal justice system, to ensure that we have prison places to put criminals behind bars. And Mr. Speaker, if I may, just briefly, by the end of this Parliament, more criminals will be behind bars than ever before. This is not a matter of being soft on crime, it's a matter of making sure that we can put criminals away in future.
Point of order, Dr. Kieran Mullen.
I genuinely seek your guidance and support, Mr. Speaker. I've submitted multiple written questions, FOI requests. We've had a name day question on this matter that was due to be answered on Friday, which the government has refused to answer as it should. The Minister said that the information we're after is in the impact assessment. That is not true. There is not the information on the number of offenders in terms of rapists and child groomers being answered. How do we in the public get answers to these very basic, incredibly important questions?
Look, what I would suggest is I'm sure the bench has heard there's outstanding questions that should have been answered.
What an incredibly emotional debate that was. Few issues unite Parliament quite like protecting victims of serious crime, and today's Commons exchange showed just how deeply MPs disagree over the government's plans for early prisoner release. Opposition MPs argued that victims of rape, child sexual exploitation and other serious offences should never have to receive letters informing them that those convicted of harming them may be released earlier than expected. They described the proposals as devastating for survivors and questioned whether public confidence in the justice system could survive such decisions. Government ministers defended the policy by arguing that they inherited a prison system under severe pressure and said difficult choices were necessary to prevent the wider justice system from breaking down. They insisted victims would receive advance notice, have their views considered through the victim contact process, and that the reforms were designed to keep the criminal justice system functioning. Behind the political arguments, however, lies a human story. Every statistic represents real people whose lives were changed forever by violent crime. Many victims want reassurance that justice is not only done but is seen to be done, while others are concerned about how early release decisions could affect their sense of safety and confidence. That is why today's debate resonated far beyond Westminster. It was about balancing public protection, the pressures facing the prison system, and the rights and well-being of victims. What do you think? Should serious violent and sexual offenders ever qualify for early release, or should sentences always be served in full? Let us know your views in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this coverage, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Britain Daily, and turn on notifications for more explosive Commons debates, PMQs clashes, and breaking political news from Westminster.